Hello, and thank you for listening to Texas History for Kids. I'm your host, Michelle Gallegos, an educator, writer, history nerd, and novice investigator. Each week on the show, we will learn about interesting parts of Texas history, from battles and historical figures to the odd and enchanted. Hi guys, and welcome back to episode number 18 entitled, If Walls Could Speak. A journey through the histories and secrets of old homes. Have you ever driven past an abandoned mansion or old ranch house and wondered, wow, how could such a beautiful piece of real estate be left neglected or alone for so long? If only the walls could talk, what would they say? What stories would they tell? In today's episode, we will discuss the Trueheart Ranch, south of San Antonio, the Varner-Hogg Plantation located in the Texas Hill Country, and the Governor's Palace in Galveston, Texas. Now, I've had a chance to explore two of the three homes, and let me tell you, there's just a world of intrigue and mystery waiting within the walls of these old houses. As you look outside of its weathered appearance, your imagination runs wild, conjuring up tales of the past, hidden behind the peeling paint and creaky, windy staircases. So let's begin with the Trueheart Ranch, where a two-story white building stands. Alongside of it are rustic outbuildings that just whisper the 19th century. For years, I've passed along this ancient house, pondering its story, wondering who once called it home, and why it now sits abandoned, almost forgotten by time. And recently, they began preserving the home, and it's been open to the public for everyone to see. And so, of course, I had to go along with my children and take them to see this beautiful house. So I wondered as I was inside of it, what the history of it was. Now, on the outside, they do have plaques that tell you a story of the Trueheart Ranch, but I had to do a little bit more digging to find some more interesting facts. The history spans from the early 1800s. It is 351 acres that sprawls along the San Antonio River on the south side of town. And currently, it's not a very well-developed site, but the San Antonio River Authority, who owns it now, does plan to renovate and create a master plan of activities. Some of those activities includes places for people to have weddings and opportunities for photography sites. It also boasts a very large portion of its land to nature preserve. The Trueheart Ranch was formed as part of a much larger Mexican government land grant that was given to Antonio de la Garza in 1824. Now, he was one of the much larger landowners in Bexar County with over 8,800 acres of land. That is a lot of land for one person. Antonio de la Garza was also the very first person to make coins in Texas. Imagine that. On one side of the coin, there were his initials, JAG, and the date 1818. And guess what was on the other side? A shiny, bright star all by itself. Some people think that this star may have been given the idea for the Lone Star, which became a special symbol for Texas later on. Again, that's just speculation. Now, these coins were tiny but valuable at the time, about the price of a nickel today. And guess where they were made? Right in the Garza home. Isn't that cool? There's also a historical marker at the spot to remember the amazing moment in history when he did make his coins. It's near the corner of Houston and Soledad Streets, located in downtown San Antonio. Now, after Antonio de la Garza died, his daughter Margarita inherited the 351 acres where the Trueheart Ranch stands today. She married James Trueheart in 1848. A little backstory on James. In 1836, the Texas Revolution was in full force, and the rallying cry of "Remember the Alamo" echoed during the Battle of San Jacinto, where Texas rebels had defeated Santa Anna's Mexican army. Texas General Sam Houston became the president of the Republic of Texas at that time. Yet, the Mexican forces were not ready to lose their claim on Texas so easily. Battles between Texas and Mexico continued on for years, even after Mexico had lost. And in 1842, General Walls and his 1,600 Mexican troops marched into San Antonio and began shooting at local citizens, including James Lawrence Trueheart, who was a 27-year-old immigrant from Scotland. Sadly, Trueheart and the rest of the men were captured that day and were forced to march a grueling 1,800 miles to the terrible Perot prison near Mexico City. The prison was a massive stone fortress, complete with a moat and a drawbridge, and it became their home for the next 2 years. They endured terrible treatment and were starved and suffered. Now, Trueheart managed to document his experiences in a diary. The men were shackled in pairs of 2 and were forced into a dungeon with no windows and only walls. It's really unknown how he was able to keep a diary under such terrible circumstances, but thankfully he did, and we were able to read about his experiences through the diary. Now, the prisoners endured unimaginable hardships until eventually they were released. When he returned to San Antonio, Trueheart married Margarita de la Garza, whose father was also Jose de la Garza. Trueheart built a 2-story white stone house to honor his wife. He made improvements to the land, which included irrigation ditches. It is believed that he even built lime-producing kilns and a stone viaduct that crossed a creek to transport lime and stone for the house while it was being built. They eventually called it the Casa Vieja, or Old House. Trueheart and his wife lived on the property for a while, but later moved to downtown San Antonio. They allowed other families to take care of the ranch and property surrounding it while they lived downtown. Some historians believe that Mr. Trueheart planted pecan orchards in the area, but archaeologists believe the land had already had many on it before the house was even built. In 1899, Margarita died. Her children sold all 371 acres of the land and ranch house to the San Antonio Hunting and Fishing Association. Over the years, the ranch has been passed along to many owners. Today, the San Antonio River Authority owns it and is restoring the property, like I said. So that's it about the Trueheart Ranch. Later in today's episode, you'll hear about a plantation house with a lot of history, from oil drilling to slavery to ranching and sugar production and beyond. This site holds a wealth of historical significance to Texas. But first, I want you all to do me a quick favor. If you're enjoying my podcast, head on over to Spotify and leave a review on the show. The first 10 people to leave a review will get 15 reading passages and resources absolutely free. That's a $30 value. From the app, just click on the 3 dots that are located next to the following button if you're following my show. Now click on Rate Show and a button message will pop up with stars. Leave 5 stars, and that's it. If you like something special about this episode, click on the episode title and scroll down to the Q&A session. I have listed a question for you to answer. If you leave a response, be sure to include your email address so that I can send you your freebies. And that's all it takes, folks. Just 5 to 10 seconds of your time. Next, we are moving on to the Varner-Hogg Plantation, which is located in West Columbia, Texas, and it's now a Texas State Historic Site. It has seen many events in history. So I'll just go over a review of the timeline of the Varner-Hogg Plantation because it does, like I said, have a lot of history behind it. The first thing I'm going to talk about is something sad. In the 1820s, the white settlers that were in the area eventually banished the Native American tribe known as the Karankawa people from their ancestral lands, which were located along the banks of the Varner Creek, where they had lived for many generations. In 1824, Martin Varner, who is considered the first white settler on the plantation, received a land grant from Stephen F. Austin as a part of the Old 300 settlers. Martin Varner was one of the first settlers to get a big piece of land in Texas. This happened when Texas was still a part of Mexico. The Mexican government gave out land to people like Martin Varner as long as they agreed to learn Spanish, become Catholic, and take good care of their land for at least 10 years. The Mexican government wanted more white people to come to Texas and take over land from the Native American groups like the Karankawa. Although the current historic site only covers a small portion of the original land grant, Varner, along with his wife, children, and at least 2 slaves, all lived in the location. Now, Varner likely constructed a log cabin for his families to live in and basic outbuildings, which were built by the slaves who tended the land. While, of course, none of these structures exist today, some believe that the current plantation house is in the same location as the original log cabin. While Varner owned the property, it was only used for a small-scale farming and ranching. He initially intended to run an alcohol distillery, which would have been the first of its kind in Texas, but he ultimately abandoned his plan. In 1834, Varner eventually sold the property to a Mr. Columbus R. Patton, and he relocated elsewhere in Texas, eventually serving in the Texas Army in 1836 before settling in Wood County. The Patton family, who was a very large family, moved in right away. Columbus R. Patton and his brother William H. Patton were involved in politics and fought in the Texas Revolutionary War. Some say that Mexican General Santa Anna was captured and held briefly on the plantation after the big battle at San Jacinto. After the war, the family turned the property into a sugar plantation, where they grew and processed sugar cane on the sugar mill that was located on the other side of the creek. They had many slaves who were forced to work for them. During the late 1840s and 1850s, the Patton family was very successful, especially in making sugar. It was one of the top producers in Brazoria County, ranking 5th in the amount of sugar that it made. However, things changed in 1854. Each year they made less sugar, and the plantation started losing money. Unfortunately, the sugar mill and other buildings were mostly destroyed in a big hurricane in the year 1900. Now only the ruins of the sugar mill are still left on the location. In 1854, after a series of medical complications, Columbus R. Patton was declared insane by the court in Brazoria County and was sent to live in an insane asylum in South Carolina. While he was away, a man named John Adriance took over the plantation. They still made sugar like before, but not as much. Columbus R. Patton passed away in 1856, and there was a long fight in court over his property. Before he got sick, he was in a relationship with an enslaved woman named Rachel. And in his will, he said she should be free and get some of his money if he should die. His family didn't like this and said Rachel made him change his mind because he was sick. But in 1857, they agreed to let Rachel and some other enslaved people go free and gave them a little bit of money. John Adriance took over the plantation and ran it until he sold it in 1869. But by 1870, they had stopped focusing on sugar and started growing other crops and raising animals instead. Former Texas Governor James Stephen Hogg bought the plantation on May 23, 1901, from the New York and Texas Land Company. He purchased the site because he thought there might be oil underneath. And after serving as governor, Mr. Hogg got involved in the oil business in Texas and helped create Texaco. He had hoped to find oil on the plantation and drilled there regularly, hoping for a big discovery like the one at Spindletop. And guess what? They did find oil. After they found it in 1918, lots of drilling for oil happened on the plantation and nearby places. Big oil companies, of course, got interested, and they made the West Columbia oil field. This field produced a lot of oil in the early 1920s, but they stopped pumping oil from there in the 1930s. There was a bit more drilling for oil in the 1940s, and some of those wells are still used today. Most of the oil came from spots southeast of the Varner Creek on the plantation. It is no surprise that the Hogg family got rich from this oil, and they used some of the money to fix up and improve the Varner-Hogg Plantation. Now we are going to move on to our third and final location called the Stewart Mansion, also known as Bishop's Palace in Galveston, Texas. It has gained a reputation for being haunted because of various reported paranormal experiences and urban legends that surround the property. Some people have claimed to have witnessed strange occurrences, such as unexplained noises, apparitions, or ghostly figures. The association of the mansion with ghost stories may be because of its long-standing history. In the year 1900, there was a hurricane off the coast of Galveston, Texas, which is considered one of the deadliest natural disasters in the United States history. Now, thousands of people died in the area. In the 1900s, people usually didn't know a hurricane was coming until it was too late. Unlike today, where we have meteorologists or people who study the weather that are able to predict and warn citizens of a community that a hurricane is coming. Now, the Stewart Mansion, also known as the Bishop's Palace, was affected by this hurricane. Although there was immense destruction caused by the hurricane, the mansion miraculously survived, relatively untouched. Historians believe that the mansion was built very well, and its sturdy construction and location being raised up higher than other buildings around it helped to protect it from the storm's devastating effects, allowing it to stand proudly and requiring only a minimum amount of reconstruction. However, the area surrounding the mansion was virtually demolished and thousands of people died. Also, the mansion's Gothic style architecture may contribute to its eerie atmosphere, especially during nighttime visits. Now, I was able to visit this site during the day, and I didn't witness anything scary or unusual, but it is an amazing place to visit. Are you ready to hear what guests have seen at the mansion? Of course you are! Now, visitors have reported sightings of ghostly figures believed to be the spirits of former residents or servants. Some claim to have seen the apparition wandering the halls or walking down the grand staircase late at night. And that staircase is a winding staircase, so if you look around the corner, you might feel like you're seeing a ghostly figure. There have been reports of strange noises emanating from various parts of the mansion, including footsteps, whispers, and unrecognizable voices. These unexplained sounds contribute to the eerie atmosphere of the property. Now, legend has it that a woman dressed in all white haunts the grounds of the mansion, sometimes appearing in the windows or wandering in the gardens outside. The identity of the lady in white still remains a mystery, but some people believe that she is connected to the mansion's past. Maybe she perished in the hurricane. Visitors have also witnessed objects moving on their own throughout the mansion. Lastly, other visitors have described experiencing sudden drops in temperatures, feeling extremely cold in some areas, or feeling extreme worry while exploring the mansion. These sensations are often associated with the presence of spirits or supernatural entities. Now, of course, it could all just be urban legend. Like I said, I personally did not feel anything like that when I went to the Bishop's Palace, but I just really enjoyed seeing the intricate designs in the wood, the beautiful furniture, and just wondering how it stood the test of time all these years. Now, another legend surrounding the Bishop's Palace revolves around hidden passages and secret rooms within the mansions. While there has been no evidence to support this, the idea of hidden chambers adds a little bit of an element of mystery and intrigue to this building. Some locals believe the Bishop's Palace holds treasures or artifacts dating back to its construction in the 19th century. These tales often center around the many wealthy people who have lived at the Bishop's Palace. While these stories are mostly based on tales passed down over time and legends from the city, they've added to the mystery and excitement surrounding the Stewart Mansion in Galveston, Texas. So now you know the legends and myths behind it. What about its history? When was this beautiful place built? Well, Colonel Walter Crushas, who was a well-known lawyer, asked Nicholas Clayton, who was known as the best architect in Galveston, to build a big Victorian castle for him and his family. It was so special that the American Institute of Architects called it one of the top 100 buildings in America. They built this amazing castle between 1886 and 1892. That's a long time to build a home. But, like I said, this was more of a castle. The house withstood the 1900 storm or hurricane with just a small amount of damage later on. This is because the designer of the house was excellent at his craftsmanship and knew how to build a house well. It also survived Hurricane Ike many years later with flooding only in the basement. In 1923, the Roman Catholic Diocese of Galveston purchased the house and it became the residence of the bishop. Hence, it's earned the name Bishop's Palace. It is where the bishops of Galveston lived until 1963. Now today, the Bishop's Palace is open to the public as a museum and allows visitors to explore its beautiful history. It's a popular tourist attraction in Galveston and listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Now, these stunning homes all hold so much history within their walls. Each one has its own unique story to tell. Some are fascinating, some are heartbreaking, and some are simply admired for their breathtaking beauty. These homes are full of captivating history, just waiting to be explored. This week's question is there a historic mansion you'd like to visit in Texas? Respond to my question in the Spotify notes. Thank you for listening. Remember, yesterday is today's history.